Welcome to Capital Talk, a program we hope will have an impact on the future of Kenya, and now more than ever. I'm Jeff Koinange. Now, all this week, if you've been watching Capital Talk, and we hope you have, you know we're talking about leadership. My guest today will agree with the saying, leadership abhors a vacuum. Do we have a vacuum in leadership? Just the other day, the president said there is no problem between him and the prime minister and that they are working closely together. Critics wonder, what planet is he on? There are problems, there are challenges. Are they being discussed? That we don't know. No replacement for former Constitutional Affairs Minister Martha Karua. So many scandals still brewing. The country is wallowing in a lot of scandals and corruptions. Where are we heading? Is leadership the problem? And on top of that, Uganda plants a flag on a 1-acre plot of land called Migingo Island, and nobody says a thing except that we're negotiating. What's going on? Let's waste no more time with my guest, who only goes by 3 initials and nothing else, and that's all that defines him. Simply PLO Lumumba.
Thank you, Jeff.
I love it. I love it. So it's incredible, Mheshimiwa, that a country could plant a flag on a tiny little island. Okay, it's only 1 acre. It's small. Maybe it's insignificant to a lot of people, but it's gaining a lot of prominence, and it's very controversial that a neighboring country could plant a flag on what we consider Kenyan soil.
Jeff, what amazes me, and the reason most everybody in Kenya says they have no power. I call it power outage in Kenya. The Prime Minister does not have power, the Attorney General does not have power, the Director of CASA does not have power. One wonders who has power, because the President also, as the Commander-in-Chief and the head of state and government, appears to have no power. You ask a very important question. Whenever Kofi Annan and indeed other friends of goodwill have tried to help us in resolving our problems, we have said we are a sovereign state. Today there is a physical assault on our sovereignty, and yet our armed forces are not placed in alert. The Ugandan constitution clearly demonstrates that Migingo is in Kenya and has been in Kenya, and the brigadier of the Ugandan army is in Migingo in Kenya, having taken a bus ride of nearly 10 hours, and he is giving directions. It begs the question, what next? Will they invade Kisumu and plant a flag? Only recently, a single American captain was in danger, and the American commander-in-chief and president said, rescue that man to end the dictatorship. And we are being told that Kenya is not upgrading the crisis. It is a tragedy of gigantic proportions, and it behooves us who love this country to tell our president with the respect that he deserves that there is a crisis in this country, and the country is looking up to him to offer leadership.
And it looks like President Museveni of Uganda is almost baiting us. Can you take the bait? We're going to push it. If you don't say anything, we push further. We push further. And that's the tragedy.
You know, there is the old saying of the camel, that the camel enters into a tent with its head, and if there is no challenge, it enters with its body, and ultimately it occupies the whole tent. President Museveni is telling Kenya, show us you have the spine, and we are telling him, well, what have we done?
And if there's oil on that island, PLO, even worse, because they discovered oil in Lake Albert in Uganda. There could be some resources in there, and nobody's talking.
Maybe President Museveni and the Ugandan administration know something that we don't, and they are simply saying that this is our territory. And let us look at this from a historical context. Idi Amin, during President Kenyatta's presidency, said that Uganda extends across the beach. Is this the beginning of the reclamation of the territory? Is the Amin syndrome playing out via Yoweri Kaguta Museveni? This is the question that we must ask. And I think that Parliament should, in my view, debate that question as a matter of national rights. The president cannot tell us that he met President Museveni in Zambia and they agreed on something, and yet President Museveni and the Ugandan government is doing something that is totally contrary. The own Minister for Foreign Affairs went to Uganda with a team of ministers, had a joint visit in Migingo and promised us that the Ugandans will withdraw. Instead, they have escalated and indeed brought a brigadier telling us that this is our territory. You Kenyans can continue to engage in cry-baby politics, but we are not bothered. We are doing what we must.
Speaking of crybaby, PLO, there's been a lot of bickering and mudslinging and finger pointing the last couple of weeks as our grand coalition slowly seems to be tearing at the seams. It's coming apart. The first resignation of a powerful minister. President has said nothing. There's been no talk of a replacement. What's going on? Is it tearing? Is it breaking apart?
This has always been an unholy and unhappy alliance. And it is even, with due respect to the men that I know who serve in government, it is informed largely by greed, not national interest. It is a tragedy of gigantic proportions that the Honorable the Attorney General of the Republic of this country does not offer an interpretation of what the national accord means, and yet it is very plain in its language. It is true that there is a coalition which was designed to ensure that this country is liberated from the valley of the shadow of death. But we are still walking in the valley of the shadow of death. And the recent outburst of Prime Minister Raila Odinga is indicative of the unease that now characterizes that coalition. And it is incumbent upon President Kibaki to come out and negotiate with Prime Minister Odinga, not for their own personal benefit, but for the benefit of the people of this country. In the natural order of things, they are agents, they hold power in trust for the people of Kenya, and it is incumbent upon them to do what they must, do that which is in the best interest of the people of Kenya. Master Karua, you may love her, you may hate her, but by resigning, she has made a statement that I will not continue to hold a senatorial office in the midst of poverty, in the midst of a crisis when nothing appears to happen, and therefore I am easing myself out the privileges and the parts of its time. For that, she ought to be congratulated. But President Kibaki has a duty also to ensure that that office is filled immediately for a reason only. It is only members of cabinet who sit at cabinet and therefore can articulate policy positions in cabinet relating to the key issues of constitutional reform, truth, justice, and reconciliation, the special tribunal on post-election violence, and national commission. There is nobody in that docket now to articulate that issue because there is no minister. And the sooner you do it, the better, because that new minister will have to be acquainted with the work that has been going on in that ministry to be in a position to articulate the vision clearly and in a focused manner and with deadlines.
And PLO, if you were the president and you were to give this post meritoriously to someone, regardless of which party they belong to, would it be James Orengo, would it be Mutula Kilonzo, who would you give it to?
I would not want to go into names because I believe that ultimately the people who work in ministries are actually technocrats. The boys and girls who take the credit do very little. But I would give it to somebody who, in my view, is capable of offering leadership and has passion for reform. And if you give him Mutula Kilonzo and James Orengo has changed in many ways. I cannot recognize my friend James Orengo, but I still think that there are germs of reform in him. And these are the germs that I would activate and appoint to the minister. Because I believe that he can listen. Mutula Kilonzo is good, is passionate, but I think that he is likely to stop. That is how I feel is my friend, but that is my
And the president coming out the other day and telling church leaders, don't interfere, don't call for fresh elections, pray for Kenya, and the prime minister and I are working together. What do you make of that?
That is what the Pharisees told Jesus of Nazareth. It is the duty of clergymen to interfere, because when Christ left, he said, thou shalt not live with bread alone, but he does not say that you can live without it. And therefore, as they attend to a spiritual need, they must also attend to a temporal need. And leadership has everything to do with it. And I'm now, with due respect to my president, pointing back, telling the clergy, go, point out mistakes. If indeed, like in the days of Melchizedek, in the days of Nebuchadnezzar, you are able to say many, many things, let it be so. They have a duty to point out things that are going wrong in the society. If they make mistakes like all humans do, we know that they have made mistakes. In addition to that, they must also tell us where we are going from. Of course, I don't agree with them that we should have elections. The country is not ready for elections. What we should focus on is electoral reform, constitutional reform, and prepare the country for elections in 2012.
And even as we limp ahead, and it looks like we're literally limping ahead, is there hope that this grand coalition will last? Because there's talk of mass resignations.
I don't think that this coalition will collapse. And even if there are mass resignation, there is no shortage of men and women in that parliament who want to fill the void that are left by others. Remember also, and I've said this before, that this coalition, with due respect to parliamentarians, is also fed by very mundane issues. People have taken loans which are payable within 5 years. Mortgages. People have taken loans to do other things. If you dissolve parliament now, how are they going to repay them? So those very mundane and practical issues will be the mother's milk of this tottering coalition, and it will survive.
What does Martha do now, PLO? Because obviously her star is rising and it will rise for a while, but she's obviously, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to predict that she will run out of steam unless she has a treasure chest somewhere.
I do not claim to have a monopoly of knowledge or wisdom, but if I were Martha, I would take time out to reflect. Because this country demonstrates that it has a very short memory, very selective memory, and in a short while, the steam will go out, and in a short while, the kind of population and press coverage that he is receiving will dissipate. So my view is that he takes time, retreats, rests, and regroups with other men and women who are involved in the reform agenda and articulated in that context.
Speaking of regroup and reform, would she join another party? Do you see her aligning with, say, the Prime Minister?
You know, it is said that politics is the art of possible. And if there is wisdom in their coming together for the purpose of short-term political interest, who knows? The Prime Minister himself at one time went to political bed with Daniel Arap Moi, who was a bosom friend of President Kibaki, and in fact, he's the one who gave the country President Kibaki. Kibaki told them, "We'll never forget." And for that reason, it is quite possible that they may tumble if it is in their short-term political interest. And I think that this is the time that politicians must not do things for short-term political interest. This country is in the doldrums. The protestations of my head of state are funny. And what we need now are men and women who love this country, men and women who are prepared to speak the truth without fear of consequence, men and women who are prepared to put their lives on the line for this country. Because if we lost a generation, we must not lose the next generation. And that requires courage, not recklessness. It requires passion, not madness. It requires focus. And it requires men and women who love this country and have been liberated from corruption.
PLO, you mentioned former President Daniel Arap Moi a moment ago. There's talk that a lot of people out there are saying they wish the Moi days. I want to talk about that in a moment. And also, this grand coalition, also the other alliances. We hear the Kikuyu Kalenjin are forming an alliance of their own. We'll talk about that. First, we'll take a break. It's PLO. I told you, it's coming out guns blazing, and the bench is heating up. We're not taking any prisoners on this one because it's all about leadership, all the lack of it. We need leadership badly in this country. There are men and women of leadership qualities out there. We're looking for them. They need to step up before it's too late. You cannot get this kind of stuff anywhere else but on Capital Talk. Don't go away because we are back in a moment. And welcome back to Capital Talk. It is hot today on the bench. No, who else but PLO to heat up the bench and light a fire under the leadership of this country, because we're sorely lacking in leadership. We badly need someone to step up to the plate, not only locally, but also when it comes to places like Migingo Island. PLO. So Daniel Arap Moi, wherever he is sitting, standing, walking, driving, or addressing a rally today, he must be laughing and saying, "I told you so."
You know, this reminds me of the biblical days when the Israelites said they wanted to go back to the flesh for some eating. And to make President Moi look good, you must be really bad. Because President Moi, with due respect to him, succeeded in destroying every institution in this country He made the executive all pass. He emasculated the legislature. He emasculated the judiciary. He destroyed the parastatal. He ethnicized the civil service. He presided over the collapse of infrastructure and did many things for which we are dealing today. Our economy was not growing but was contracting. In the past few years, President Kibaki presided over a growing economy. But the President Kibaki that we knew in the first 2 years of the NAC administration lost the original script. And from the year 2005, what we have seen is a systematic ethnicization of Kenyan politics, a systematic deprivation of a large majority of Kenyans what they need and deserve. And therefore, Kenyans are now saying that Moi was better. Because if there was corruption, it was devolved corruption so that we got some ground. But this corruption in the Moi, in the Kibaki regime, is only restricted to a few people and the legality of the few. And that is very sad because the case, President Kibaki's administration must be given some credit, particularly in the area of infrastructure when you drive around the country. It must also be said that some fiscal discipline has been introduced in the country. To that extent, he has done well. But a country is not just economics. A country is about social cohesion. A country is about politics with hygiene. And that is what is lacking. And a country is one which has leadership that gives hope. And that is what the country is asking for. And we are saying that is sad. I would not myself want to go to the Egypt days of President Daniel Arap Moi. I think that this country has good young men and women and even old men and women who can serve it well. And what we need now is to tell the people that it is darkest before dawn. What now President Kibaki can do to redeem himself and to have a legacy that is worth writing about in history is to preside over reform. If President Kibaki can preside over the delivery of a new constitution, if President Kibaki can tell us a new constitutional dispensation is introduced, ensure that we start institutional reform and electoral reform and deal with truth, justice, and reconciliation and deal with national cohesion, Kenyans will forgive him and say, yes, he's set up on a good path. Let somebody else take the baton of leadership and lead us to Jericho. The Kibaki generation is what I call the Moses generation. They can only lead you from Egypt into the desert. But the group that must lead us into the promised land must be Joshua and somebody else. And the Joshuas are there. They are waiting under the appropriate time. I believe they will nourish and they'll serve this country without due regard to ethnic origin.
Speaking of Joshua's PLO, does the Joshua have to come from the usual list of what I call the usual 5 suspects? Uhuru, Ruto, Raila, Martha, Kalonzo. Does it have to be these 5, or is there some other Joshua out there who will come out and this will be the person who will say, this is our person?
You know, Jeff, speaking candidly and honestly, I believe that Raila Amolo Odinga has served this country well. He made his contribution. He was detained for it. I believe that Kalonzo Musyoka has been in parliament for over 20 years. He has served, whether well or not, I do not know. Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta is slightly older than me. He has had his stint in the Moi administration and in the Kibaki administration. And William Ruto has served the Moi administration and the Kibaki administration. I believe it is time for them to say, we have served. Let us now hand it over to the next generation. And my prayer, and I pray them, is that that group of politicians must now ease themselves off the stage and allow a new generation of leaders to emerge. And history will remember them for you. Yes, you cannot be the mother of a revolution. You cannot be the midwife of a revolution and the child of the revolution. This is what they are trying to do. They midwife the change. Let them be midwives. And then say that the child that they saw being given back to is a good child. That history will remember them for you.
So why, and it begs the question, PLO, why can't we have someone like you? If you have leadership qualities, you know how to run an institution, why can't someone like PLO with a team be that change that we need?
Jeff, let me tell you, hides his best men and women until the appropriate time. Who tells you that good men and women are not being incubated to be eaten at the appropriate time? Who tells you, Jeff? Who tells you? Let us pray, wait, and plan, and hope the appropriate time is coming, and the society will unveil its best men and women willing to serve and to sacrifice.
Will that day come soon, PLO? Because when we're speaking of alliances, there's another alliance forming with the Kikuyu and Kalenjin. The problems on the ground have still not been solved. IDPs, thousands of them being rained on in this rainy season and suffering and you know, they're dying of diseases and hunger. Until you solve that problem down there, you can't solve the problem at the top.
You know, in many ways, and I know many of the serving politicians in Kenya, they are out of touch. The ground has shifted so fundamentally from under their feet, but they do not know. They still think that Kikuyu Kalenjin alliance or the Kenya to Matusa alliance is something that is going to solve. No, it is not. The people down there have now changed. They have now realized Kalenjin, Kikuyu, Luo, Kisi, that is not their Kikuyu-ness or their Luo-ness or their Kamba-ness or their Kalenjin-ness that is going to be the problem. They are now beginning to realize that they have been manipulated for too long, insulted for too long, abused for too long, treated as simpletons for too long. And those who think that by merely sitting in a hotel and at public rallies and they get adulation at public rallies, they are going to have the Kikuyu and the Kalenjin at their beck and call and cheating themselves. Let me tell you, Kenyans now realize that their safety lies in good governance, that they do not care the ethnic extraction of their president or their minister. And I'm telling you, the year 2012 is the year of goodness. It is the year when this country will take a corner that it has not taken before. The time now is to de-ethnicize the community. The time now is to energize the community and to allow for the community to prepare. A friend of mine once told me, take care of the wind and don't worry about the windmill. The people are the wind and it's blowing in a different direction. Those who are leading the Kalenjin Kikuyu Alliance or the Western Alliance will be tidy. God has changed and changed in favor of the
people. Nicely put. In the U.S., President Kibaki right now would probably be considered what we call a lame duck president. He's got less than 3 years to go. Like you were saying, historians will judge him on what he does next. And he could do the right thing, or he could just sit back and say, you know what, I'm not going to be here next time around. Why should I care?
That would be very sad. For a man who joined politics before I was born, for a man who at one time was included in the Time magazine as one of the 100 leading men in the world, for a man who for a long time was considered a good economist, for a man who was considered a gentleman politician, for a man who in 2002 became a president who was elected by the largest majority of Kenya, for a man who for the first 2 years in office presided over a growing economy, for a man who for 2 years presided over a country whose citizens were the most optimistic in the world, for such a man to say, I do not care would be a tragedy. If I were to advise President Kibaki, I would say, nobody rules goodness except just once thing. You may have made mistakes, and indeed you have. During your work, we have nearly fallen into a civil war, but you can redeem yourself. Do what you must. Bring us a new constitution. Do what you must to emphasize the country. Do what you must. Give hope to the country. Do what you must. Preside over a country that you can be proud of, and your children and children's children will be proud of, and say, our grandfather was the president of this country, and he is to be elected for it. He could not afford the luxury of being reckless. He must now behave as if he is holding an hand and hold this country and hand it over, because historians tell you that you are not successful until your successor succeeds. President Kibaki must do that for this country.
And the window, PLO, is the window shutting fast? Do we have a time frame for this to happen?
President Kibaki must lead from the front. The Zulu have a saying that if you want to know a hero, if the skies on his forehead, he's a hero. If it is at the back, he's a coward. President Kibaki must now come forth and provide leadership. I want to see my president doing something that President Kibaki used to do. Address his election once every month. What President Obama and his predecessors do every week in the United States. Leading from the front on the question of constitutional reform. Leading from the front on the question of the settlement of the IDPs. Leading from the front on the question of funding. Leading from the front on the question of insecurity. Leading from the front in the question about the invasion of our sovereignty in this country. How is the chief diplomat of this country on such issues? And if he does not have the intellectual ability to do it, what I keep wondering is why he is not doing it. This is what I keep wondering. I'm not satisfied that it's the people who surround me. Show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. Therefore, if he's a good man, you must have good friends who care for you. And if they are there, this is the time that we must tell them, President Kibaki's friend, lead your friend in the right path, that he may, in history, stand alongside Julius Nyerere and Nelson Mandela and President Kibaki.
Indeed. And is this why some critics say this man will go down as one of the worst presidents this country ever had? When the time came, he didn't step up to the plate.
President Kibaki not be remembered as a man who never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And he can do that if he does not seize this opportunity as he must. When I listened to him talking to the country on the day of the inauguration of the head of the PCA, I saw some mountains of passion. If that anger could be used positively, it is the anger and passion that we need. I want that anger regarding Migingo. I want that anger and passion on the Constitution. I want that anger when he's talking about the IDP. I want that anger when he's doing things that are in the best interest of the country. Where is that anger? Of the positive kind, canalized and channeled in a manner that is designed to do only one thing. He must take a right. He can do it, he must do it, he has no choice. Otherwise, his story is not right.
PLO,
thank you very much.
Well put.
Thank you.
As always.
Thank
well
you.
done. Congratulations.
Thank you very
and
much.
I hope you're that Joshua we're looking for.
Let's pray.
PLO, simply PLO. He says, let's pray for that Joshua. Moses has led us out of Egypt to the desert. We need to take it to the next level. That's what we're looking for, that next leader, because as PLO would fondly agree, leadership abhors a vacuum. We have a vacuum. We need to fill it. The window is closing. The time is now. What a guest. I love listening to PLO. I can listen to him all day, as can you. What a show. What a week it's been on Capital Talk. You cannot get these kinds of guests anywhere else. And if you're not watching Capital Talk, you're simply not watching television. It's available right here, the award-winning station, K24, where we are all Kenyan.
All the time.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Capital Talk is recorded at the Fairview Hotel, the country hotel in town.